Our next presentation is about the JTNM tested program, which is a fairly large exercise to validate and help verify whether or not different devices meet the requirements of the Joint Task Force on Network Media. So we have two excellent speakers from Europe here today. We have Ievgen Kostiukevych from the EBU and Willem Vermoost from VRT. So take it away, gentlemen.
Thanks, Wes. Amazing to see you all. Dare I say that the JTNM Tested is the biggest program and the exercise for testing media over IP devices, Wes? Okay, I think I can. So, for those who has no idea what did I just say, I'll explain a little bit what JTNM Tested did, why should you care, why there is so many abbreviations in this presentation, and how can you benefit from this at the end of the day for spending time listening to us today. So, what is JTNM Tested? We're going to talk about that. How did we do it? What exactly we did? Why did we do that? And then again, what were the deliverables? How can you reuse it? How can the industry benefit from it? How can the end user benefit from this and already benefiting? So you may have heard this abbreviation mentioned. For example, I was today at the breakfast event with EVS and Arista, and the JTNM Tested program was mentioned as being the driving force for adoption and enforcing and encouraging the manufacturers to implement the standards, implement the open standards, and work all the way and going an extra mile in implementing optional features and things that really benefit the end users, the security and the reliability of the implementations and the installations as the result. So this is an industry initiative organized by different bodies, standardization bodies, and specification recommendation bodies like the MWA, but also user groups like the European Broadcasting Union, which I'm representing right now. It is mainly driven by the user request for more robust implementations, for more predictability, for more understanding on how the implementations really fit in within the open standards framework. And it is important that I will say that it's not a certification program per se, because we don't have, unfortunately, the authority behind us to say, hey, you're certified. So, but we openly publish everything that we do, how we organize the tests, how we perform the tests, what are the criteria. I'll get to that in a moment. So, what are the major kind of scope of the program? We test three most important things, in our opinion, that make a good, robust implementation, which is the behavior in terms of the data plane. How does the device behave on the network when it's introduced there? Can I ping the device? A simple thing says that. Can I ping the device? Can I freely assign the IP address? Can I use things like LLDP to discover the device? But also also going up the layer, how does the device conform to the ST2110 standards? Does it behave according to the -21 standard? Does it do the proper packetization and properly puts on the wire the audio and video payloads? And there is a test plan attached to that is created by my colleague Willem, who will talk about that in a moment. The second pillar is the control plane. How does the device is being controlled? Can it implement all the requirements in the NMOS specifications? Can I really do what the specifications are requiring? Because just like in ST2110 standards, in NMOS specifications, there are a lot of optional things that are kind of not mandatory, but if they're there, the usability is greatly increased and the compatibility between the devices is greatly increased. So that is being curated as a separate task plan by our colleagues and friends at CBC Radio Canada, who are driving the NMOS adoption in MWA as well. And then, of course, the third pillar, in our opinion, one of the most important ones. If you saw the pyramid on the other side of the booth, you'll see that there is a layer called security, which is bright red, with a little bit of touch of yellow right now, which is a good sign. But in principle, we consider every device that is attached to a network as a potential threat, as a potential attack vector. So everything that was connected to the JTM network has been scanned, has been evaluated, and there were active attempts to kind of get into the device, not to mess it up, not to hurdle the performance in other tests, but just to understand how good is the device in terms of general culture of security behaving on the network. So these task plans are openly published. You can call them open sourced, right? So they're available. They're part of the catalogs that you can download and use. As the appendix at the end of the catalog, there is a description of every single test that we run. How did we do that? What were the prerequisites? What was the scenario? What are the criteria for demonstrating or not certain capabilities? And that was done by a group of people that are way smarter than me, and I was privileged and happy to work with them in a group that created that. Same goes for the control plane task plan, and we also were using completely free and open source tools so that everyone can replicate the program by themselves, and that is our main goal with the program, is that it is a living and breathing thing, because essentially we were taking a snapshot in time of that particular version of the code running on that particular device in this particular circumstances. But every installation is unique. Every scenario is unique. Every project will require certain tweaks to the RFP, because your behavior will be different from someone else's behavior, because you have your workflows, someone else will have their own workflows. So we are giving you a framework that you can work with your vendor to say, hey, as part of the RFP, do you mind looking at this task plan and saying, how would you perform if we would run those tests against you? And then giving you also the description of all the network and all the devices that were active in terms of infrastructure, like what was the PTP clocks, what kind of profile did you run, so that you can replicate that and apply those tests and see the performance firsthand. Again, pyramid. You probably will be tired of seeing it by the end of the NAB. Happy to say that at that breakfast at EVS, the pyramid was also mentioned, but one of the end users saying we actually are actively applying this in our discussions with the vendors. There is a QR code on the other side of the booth that you can read about the pyramid, what it is, how does it work. And so we broadly map the test plans to the layers of the pyramid just to explain how they are conforming and how they relate to each other. So just very quickly, because I think I'm running a little bit late. I want Willem to spend a lot of time explaining the tests. I will just tell you what did we do in terms of kind of trying to replicate the real world scenario for this exercise. We tried to really build a network that would be very, very similar as possible to the real network that you would run in an installation. It was a fairly large network with spine leaf topology, fully routed. Every single device was in their own layer 3 domain to test fully layer 2 and layer 3 performance from the device perspective all the way through the network, with dynamic routing, with all that shebang. There wasn't SDN, so we wanted really to see the low-level network performance. So the network was federated by traditional IGMP and PIM. IGMP version was part of that exercise, seeing how actually the network would react to the requests that are sent by the device. And we also had an active pair of active and passive master clocks, and of course the out-of-band management network and all the NMOS infrastructure on that. So just a bit of numbers for you. That's the number of switches, number of ports that we ran. Some interesting observations in terms of finally we're moving from 10 gig to more standard-ish 25 gig, which was interesting observation, and we saw a big bump in the use of 100 gig ports. Again, 2 BTP Grandmasters. very interesting second part is you would think that DHCP is something easy to manage. You just put it in. No, remember, every single device was in their own layer 3 port. So we needed a scope, DHCP scope per device. This puts a lot of emphasis on automation. If you would do that manually, if you would script 577 DHCP scopes in the DHCP config, that's nightmare. That's just devilish. So yeah, a lot of automation was applied to the network, including a full network as code approach. It was very, very great, actually, to see that, on the contrary to previous events where we would arrive a week in advance, we would rack the switches, and then the adventure with the console begins, right? And then you spend interface, Ethernet 1, no. One single Ansible playbook, the network was up and running in 30 minutes. Beautiful. Okay, Willem, would you like to talk about the findings, the results, and how people can actually get that thing? Yep.
So thank you, Ievgen. I hope this is more or less a moment you've been waiting for. So bring out your phone, scan the QR code, and you get those results for free. No stress at all. We don't ask anything. You don't get spam emails. It's just for free. Now, how does it look like? So we spend a lot of time capturing all the results in an Excel sheet. It looks pretty simple at first sight. So on the top, you find all the different tests with it. And I can guarantee you we don't show all of them. And just the rows, the horizontal rows, are all the products that we did test. So you find the name, the product and the vendor, and also the version of the product that we test. Because of course, if you have the next version, maybe there's another problem that comes with the next version. So this is why we're very specific. We did test this version. Now, this is the data plane, the basic 2110 behavior. So you can imagine it starts with the really basic things like, well, can we ping the IP interface? Also something very simple. If we ping it, what's the time to live parameter from the response? Because if it's just 1, then you can put it in a layer 3 network, but it's not routable. So you need to look at those basic things, and you see the more you get to the right side, the more interesting the tests become. But don't worry, if you want to do this at home, the QR code gives you everything that you need to do at home if you want to do it. So what's part of the deal? That's the network test, -20, the video, -22, which was new. So we looked into compressed video as well. The audio, -30, 31, ancillary data with -40, and of course, redundancy with 2022-7. So what did we look at? 35 vendors were published in the results. They, of course, had multiple products with them. So you see 84 products in the test sheet. And maybe take a look a little bit at the numbers here. So 63 video devices, 17 audio-only devices. But the total amount of, just for the 2110 catalog, 11,000 tests were performed. Now, what did we find? The network interface tests, well, you see the yellow bit, right? You would imagine that DHCP, that's in use for a long time, otherwise you wouldn't be able to use your laptop at home. Imagine you would have typed your IP address at home. No, that's not possible. So if you have a network like this, the ones that we used at the test event, you need to have DHCP. But only 67% uses DHCP on the management network interface. So if you have a big installment, please think about it. Maybe you want to have devices that are good in DHCP. There at the bottom, 2110-10, you see support IGMP version 3, source specific. Well, that's something that you might want to have, or maybe not, but if you want to have it, look for the devices that can actually handle source specific multicast. This was a new test that we performed in this session, and I should say already, 67% in this case have source-specific multicast available. So that's really a good achievement with this round of testing. Now, going further into the details a little bit, that's an interesting one. 2110-10, 67% of the devices expose their SDP. This is something you really need to have. 2110 flows are not self-explanatory. So if you don't have the SDP, you don't know what you're looking at. So again, this is a very interesting piece to look at. If you're installing something, look at this factor. You need to have the SDP. What was new? 2110-22, and already 25% of the devices came with a -22 implementation. This is really, really great news. So -30, 77% have recommended the SCP values. That's also something to take into account. And for the -7, I'll pause a little bit -7. So if you're building something and it's redundant or it should be redundant, you go with -7. This means you build your Amber and your Blue network, so you're spending the double amount of money, right? You have 2 networks. Now, 88% of the devices demonstrated capabilities in the -7 test, meaning you plug it in, you plug it out, and it fails over perfectly. But of course, our dear colleague, Jack Douglas, has a nice box that can perform a little bit of a harsher test. And it intermits, even on a packet-based level, it fails. So it drops a packet on the one leg, then it enables the packet on the one leg, and does the same thing, the reverse thing on the other leg. And actually, this is something that happens in a real IP network. When something goes wrong, it's not black and white, it's intermitting. So think about this. If you want to prevent yourself for those intermitting failures, 58% have valid seamless protection switching. So that's interesting. If you're building something and you want to protect yourself for this, you need to test upfront your boxes before you install them into your, even before you buy them, right? Now, for NMOS, we did something similar, and actually, I'm not the guy to talk about NMOS, this is Felix, but he's very busy on the show here today, so I'll try to do my best and give an overview of the results of NMOS. So, the same thing, if you scan the QR code, you get a full catalog of all the tests and of all the results as well. So startup behavior, BCP003, ISO 4, registration discovery, connection management, all those good things that are out there for AMWA specifications. So the results, you can download them. And you see already a lot of green. And this is actually why the pyramid is a little bit greener on the NMOS side of things. These boxes are available. So if you want it, you get it on the market today. No stress at all. So 90% tests did pass the ISO 4 registration and discovery test. This is huge. So every box that we test, almost every one of them is successful. So that's really, really, really great about this test. Now, of course, we introduced some new things like BCP003, and it's new, so maybe not all of the boxes demonstrated capabilities. So 12% do basic full secure communication, and this is interesting. This is also why you see a small yellow drip on the security layer of the pyramid. There's secure communication possible. So that's good. So if you want to have secure communication in your facility, please ask for those things. Those are available in some products already. So there's another part, the third part, and actually my colleague from VRT, Gerben Dirks, did lead the security testing. And it's not to harass vendors, it's not to harass people that install things, because security, you're in both, right? As a user, as a vendor, you need to be both at the party for security. So we encourage participants to improve their security, the level up, and we're taking the temperature. We don't want to blame and shame, and we're not publishing bad scores. This would be harmful as well for the vendor as for the user. Imagine if there's one with a bad score and it's published, then you get probably attacked because it's out there in the open. So this is why we don't publish those things. Now, how did we do those tests? Well, pretty simple. There's something called Greenbone. You can download it, use it. And then we have our JTNM tested networks and all the devices under test. Now, there were a lot of devices. So we needed to scale it up a little bit. So this is what we did. There are a few of those Greenbone devices and a few colleagues that did run the test. And now, actually, this is the power of EBU and EBU members, because we could use people from the BBC in England, also from Canada, so we could use different time zones to continue our testing. And this is actually one of the tricks that we did in order to get to the end and to get all the results in. So this should not be considered as a penetration test. That's really something you need to know. We did not try to bring down devices. This is just a normal scan, a green bone out of the box, and you run it and you see what type of results you will have. So in total, 145 IP addresses were scanned, 93 unique devices, 71 scans on the media network, 74 scans on the management network. A lot of numbers, right? And with a lot of numbers, you get a lot of results. And of course, a lot of results need to be filtered before you get to the useful bits. So we started with 7,800 findings. And then, well, you need to think about how severe are those findings. So first filter, we get to 2,000, let's say 2,100 potential vulnerabilities, bringing it down to 777 potential vulnerabilities, and then 601 potential vulnerabilities. So out of all those vulnerabilities, there are 96 criticals, 93 highs, the mediums, and then a few lows. Now, this doesn't say anything, right? So there's another graph, and this is the interesting graph. Here you do see all the different types of kit available on the x-axis, and on the y-axis you see the amount of vulnerabilities of a specific device. So you see there are a few things where there's no bar at all. That's not an empty sheet. No, that's a device without vulnerabilities that we did find. So that's actually also why there's a little bit of yellow color on the pyramid with security. There are a few other devices that stand out, but well, maybe not in a positive way. So there might be some work in future. Now, what are the type of vulnerabilities that we find? Unpatched software. Unsupported software, so really old pieces of software that's no longer out there really on the market, so it's still somewhere. Encryption, misconfiguration, unnecessary features, mail servers, if you don't need a mail server on a vision switcher, just saying something, well, just get it off, right? Web interface weaknesses, default credentials, and unauthenticated remote access. So, well, security, for most of the people, it's an afterthought, but actually security comes from the beginning of the project. It's not just the vendor with their equipment, it's the vendor, it's the user, it's the beginning, it's the total, the full project. And there's a security group at EBU that just published as well a new document, or a refurbished document of EBU R143. So if you have a tender or you're going to purchase kit, just use that document and attach it to your tender, and you will get the right results without having to think too hard about it, because security, that's really a special thing. So use those tools that are out there, and you'll get the good answers. This is a slide from Gerben. I really love it. And he says, well, if you look like a duck, you walk like a duck, you quack like a duck, well then probably you are a duck. Now, in our media and entertainment sector, please don't be the sitting duck, right? Otherwise, you might get hit. That's not what we want. So, this being said, I would gladly give the word back to Ievgen for some conclusions here. Thank you.
Thanks, Willem. And of course, I had to put this picture of Jack Douglas in the background. For those who know him, yeah, that's him. So, after we've successfully delivered the program last year, we sat down and we thought, well, what's next? How is the industry gonna move forward now? And what needs to be done from different parties that were involved in this testing? And first thing we thought, it's okay. It's time to update the pyramid. And spoiler alert, we did. It's on the other side. So look around the booth. We need to look for a way to run these programs in a more sustainable and repeatable fashion, because putting a team you'll see it in a minute, of dozens of people, and putting hundreds of world-class leading engineers from the leading manufacturers in the field, even for a week, in the same place at the same time, is a logistical nightmare. It is just not going to be possible to do even every year, not even about twice a year. So the GATNM is currently working with EBU to find a way of how we can democratize the program, how we can enable more vendors to do this in a more repeatable fashion, maybe working with the testing teams one-on-one and not as a regular cadence, but as an ongoing kind of like a CI/CD pipeline. As the products get delivered, as the products get updated, can we establish a framework that is in a responsible fashion, not just self-certifying, saying, "Hey, I'm good. I'm gonna tick some boxes. I'm good." No, in a curated, observed way that the vendors can work with us on an ongoing basis to support the catalog and update it more frequently in a more repeatable fashion. While the value of the badge is still there, it needs to be revised. It needs to be increased so that the more users are asking for this, and so they're giving incentive to the vendors to actually spend their time, spend their development cycles going through this program. And of course, cybersecurity is a major thing. You've heard Willem, you saw the pyramid. This is something we need to work on as a collective. And there is still value in large events, so we will hope and try to run something next year. We're not going to do it this year. We're taking a break. Think of it as a holiday, but we're going to try to do it this year. This is just a part of the testing team, not even the participants team. This is just the logistics and the testing team behind that made it possible. And so on behalf of them, I say thank you to you for listening. Hopefully you will find value in this. You'll get the slides if you scan your badge, and you'll get the QR codes, you'll get all the links. Benefit from it, use it, ask for it to your vendors if you're running projects, if you're running tenders, and enable us to continue doing that work by encouraging vendors to talk to us, because we're not getting paid for that, frankly.